Namaste and welcome everyone. It is a great honor and privilege for us to have Sri Yogaditya Singh Rawal ji with us to talk about ancient Indian martial arts and related topics. Yogaditya Singh ji is a national bodybuilding championship winner. He is a fitness enthusiastic, a blogger, and Mr. India in 2016. He is also an author of the book, co-author of the book Saffron Swords, which is right here, along with his wife, Manushi Sinha Rawal ji. He's a heritage traveler and an enthusiast for collector and martial arts practitioner, as I mentioned earlier. He also has a fascinating collection of pictures and some objects such as swords in his personal collection. So this is going to be fascinating. It's a great topic, and welcome Yogaditya Singh ji. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Namaste everyone. Namaste to all.
Thank you. For those who are not familiar with Agastya Gurukulam, maybe I'll just quickly go over who we are. Agastya Gurukulam is a United States-based nonprofit organization. We have a footprint in 3 countries, in the US, in Canada, and India. We offer several courses for students of different ages, and our mission is to decolonize education. And what we're trying to do is teach traditional Indian knowledge systems to children around the world, including our languages such as Sanskrit, traditional mathematics from Indian system and written by Indian mathematicians. We also teach ISSA, and we actually use Manushi Sinha ji's and Yogaditya Singh Rawal ji's book Saffron Swords as one of the books in our program, which talks about the history of victories and the brilliant and brave resistance against foreign colonial invasions by our ancestors. For more information, please look over our website, www.agastyagurukulam.org. With that, let's jump right into this. So, Yogaditya, this is a fascinating topic. Can you tell us a little bit about, how old is the history of martial arts in India?
Well, history of martial arts is as old as humans figured out that they had to fight for resources. So, basically, first they learned from animals. They mimicked the movements of animals, and then slowly, based upon the terrain where they were based and other circumstances and situations, they gradually learned some of the moves of this, which slowly compounded into a system. This was followed all over the world with little bit differences. And so in India, basically, if we speak, we have an image from Harappa, which shows the first technique of one of the ancient Indian martial arts, Sanatan Shastra Vidya. It is basically a kicking technique used to stop and coming opponent.
Mm-hmm.
So we can say that in India, been practiced long, almost in the Vedic period, and Indian martial arts are very much, you can say, they are very deep and very, very strong in the basic and the foundation. They are very, very, very much science based.
Okay.
So history is quite long. And as different situations appeared, they merged different styles and they basically evolved.
Yeah, so, could you please speak a little bit more about how that evolution took place? In Vedic period, maybe it was, there were certain things that started it, and then over a period of time, with, say, around the time of Buddha and Chandragupta Maurya, how did that work? Is there any mention of martial arts in Ramayana and Mahabharata, for example, which are much earlier? And then in later periods with, Islamic and British invasions in India, how did those things change over time?
As I mentioned, the basic techniques and the principles, they changed according to the situations and the challenges posed in front of them. Mm-hmm. Like in Mahabharata, we have a huge description of ancient Indian martial arts. In fact, the one which I practice now, it borrows heavily from there. Like I would just give a small example. We have all heard in Mahabharata as well in Ramayana the concept of Malla Yuddha.
Yes.
So Malla Yuddha was unarmed fighting. Fighting. It was, many people mistakenly now take it as to be Kushti.
Right.
But it was radically different from Kushti. In Malla Yuddha, the fighters used to kick, they could punch, they could bite even. So it was very fatal. So in Mahabharata, we have 4 kinds of Malla Yuddha described. They are Jarasandhi, named after the warrior Jarasandh, then Bhimseni, then there is Jamvanti, and then there is Hanumanti. So these kind of martial art, these kind of Malla Yuddhas, they are still carried into the martial art which I practice, Sanatan Shastra Vidya. We all know about Ramayana. Like Sri Ram, he was a ace archer, and Hanumanji was a mace wielder. He used to wield a huge gada. So all these concepts and weapons, they came on as the need arose for them. As different situations evolved, different opponents, different terrains. So martial arts evolved in India according to accommodate all these challenges and to overcome all these challenges. Then with the coming of Islamization, new challenges appeared. New kind of weapons were required. But the principles of basic Indian martial arts were so strong that they were basically able to amalgamate new weapons, new technologies, and new strategies.
Wow, fascinating. Well, when my 2 daughters are making too much ruckus around the house, I call them Chanur and Mushti. Cool. So, and then, India being such a vast civilization, stretching from, the Indus down to Sri Lanka and out east to Myanmar. How did different martial arts practices evolve in different regions of India? I mean, in the south, people have Kauri. In the north, you have Sanatan Shastra Vidya. The Sikhs have Gatka. Is there, are the unifying principles the same? And if yes, then how did the regions adopt them to customize them, so to speak, and evolve them in their own way? So what are the similarities? What are the differences?
Well, according to my understanding, the situations and most importantly, the terrain was different. The fighting was going to be different on different terrains. Like in the plains, it was suitable to fight open battles. You could use cavalry, you could use chariots. Then we move on to mountains. Their chariots could not be used. Heavy cavalry could not be used. The fighting there was more, it was suitable for an, you can say, guerrilla type of attacks. So these all contributed to the kind of martial arts we practiced at different places. Then there were the, you can say, availability of different materials, because martial arts was never fought unarmed. No Indian martial art was fought unarmed.
I see.
Yeah. So as different availability of different raw materials for making weapons was there, so the weapons changed, and according to them, the fighting styles were also different. So the most probably it was most importantly the thing was terrain, which led to different development of different martial arts. But yeah, the main basic principles are very much similar. But as they bifurcated, some add some new things, some were minus, something was diluted, and this way different martial arts grew. But yeah, we can very confidently say that the cradle of martial arts in whole world is India.
Okay, fascinating. Yeah, maybe you can talk a little bit more about that. And can we trace influence of Indian martial arts in other countries around the world? For example, I mean, when people think of martial arts today, they think of China and Kung Fu and karate and the Bruce Lee and Jackie Chan movies.
Yeah.
How did traditional Indian martial arts influence some of these other martial arts in other countries around the world?
Well, India was basically the center of civilization since time immemorial. And traders, students, and other people used to visit. And sometimes the monks and sadhus, they used to travel far and wide. So it is said that a monk take martial arts to the China, to main China, and to other Oriental nations. It is said to be Bodhi Dharma,
Mhm.
who took certain principles from here, and they were adapted according to that place, according to the situations over there. Slowly and slowly, like this. And still, a very well-known martial art is Muay Thai, practiced in the Thailand area, Thailand, Indonesia, and all over this. They still have names such as Hanuman. They still have Hanuman Yuddhan in there.
Wow.
Muay Thai. Yeah, they pray to Lord Hanuman, as we have Hanuman idol in akhadas and all the gymnasiums still. They too do the same in Muay Thai. Many of the techniques are known as musht. The punch is still known as musht. Yeah.
Hmm.
Similarly, like the Filipino martial art Kali. Kali is said to be named after the goddess Kali.
Oh, I didn't know about this martial art. Where is it practiced?
Kali is practiced in Philippines.
Hmm.
Yeah, mostly in Philippines. It uses sticks, it uses daggers, it uses short swords, and unarmed as well. So the origin of the name is said to be from Kali. And
Right.
there are other martial arts also which have taken the elements from Indian martial arts. Now, how they went over there or who took them, this could be a matter of further research.
Hmm. Yeah, no, that's a great point. And so related to that, maybe a couple of questions on, what is first of all, how is traditional Indian martial arts and even currently as they are practiced, how are they described in our history books? Because I know growing up in India and going to school there, I don't remember seeing this mentioned anywhere in our history books.
Well, I have been interested in martial arts since last 4 or 5 years, not long. But these 4 or 5 years, I have devoted a lot of time and a lot of my resources and you can say a lot of traveling has gone into it. And I have not come across very many books on this subject which cover this aspect of our Indian martial arts or even the deeds of warriors.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever is left is mostly in type of folk tales. You can say where folk tales or some remnants of books are there. Like Dhanurved is not available fully, which is said to be the primary martial text of India. It is not available fully. Similarly, we have but Agni Puran. Agni Puran has some chapters on martial arts. It describes in detail how to fight with a stake, how to fight with a mace and a spear and all those things, and even unarmed fighting. So these two are the basic texts, but apart from that, I don't think there are many texts left. I would give this thing that maybe with the coming of Islamization and destroying of our Gurukul system, particularly in the Takshila and the Nalanda universities, a lot of books were burned. It is said that Nalanda burned for almost 6 months. So maybe a lot of books and practitioners were either killed or they were burnt or whatever, they were destroyed.
Yeah, no, I think
the current books don't cover anything on Indian martial arts.
Right. So that's sad. First of all, I think around the world when you look at it, countries like China, Korea, Japan, they take huge pride in not only continuing their martial arts traditions, but developing them further and teaching that to every generation. I mean, we live here in Canada, and we have friends, Canadian friends, who practice, Japanese sword fighting. My own kids, they study Korean martial arts. And there's a huge number of different dojos and places that teach karate, taekwondo, all kinds of things, right? It is sad and unfortunate that, based on what you mentioned, the root civilization from where a lot of these things were inspired, and obviously they did a lot of work over the centuries and millennia to make them their own, and they've gone in different directions. But where it came from in that land today, nobody seems to know a lot about this. It's not in our history books. So can you maybe speak a little bit more about the importance of learning this? Like some people would say, why should we care? I mean, it's there, it's not there, it's not there. How does it matter? What is the importance of teaching both the history of our martial arts and the practice of martial arts to our next generation?
I would like to say that it is extremely important. If you care about yourself, it is extremely important to learn it. If you care for your kids, it's extremely important to learn it. First thing, we live in a very volatile kind of world. Be it US, be it Canada, be it India. Self-defense is always a requirement. You don't know when and where a situation might arise where you have to defend yourself, your family, your kids. And everywhere, whatever people say, everywhere police or army is not going to be present. You have to be capable of yourself first. So martial arts, whichever martial art it is, it can give you that confidence that you can face a situation. It can give you that strength. It can teach you the techniques and the strategies that are required to save yourself and your family at that time. So first concept is this, which is very important. Second, practicing martial art or anything or any sort of such kind of martial activity, it instills a discipline in you. Because you can't learn martial art overnight. You do need to practice it for long. You do need to do it consistently. Then only you can learn it. So it is very much required. It basically develops character. Learning of any martial art or any workout regime for that, it develops character in you. And thirdly, in Indian case, like we need to know our culture. We need to know what our ancestors practiced. We need to know. We need to know how they performed the heroic deeds we read about in books. That is one of the main reasons. It was one of the main reasons for me to search for an Indian martial art. I was always fascinated, how did this thing happen in history? I was really curious why nobody could lift Angad's foot in Ravan's darbar. So there are questions like that. And we need to be aware of our martial culture.
The next question is, for me, can you please describe a little bit more about the martial art that you yourself practice and perform?
I have been practicing Sanatan Shastra Vidya. It translates to timeless knowledge of weapons. It is timeless. It is said to be timeless because, as like many arts of India, we say that they are derived from the primordial Adi Yogi, the Shiv, Mahadev Shiv. Similarly, Sanatan Shastra Vidya is descended from Mahadev Shiv himself. He was the first practitioner, and from there, this art came to human beings. Later to the Naga and Nath Sadhus, from there to Kshatriyas, and this way it flowed down. It has been used by Kshatriyas and other warriors all over the time. It is time tested. It has been tested in the battlefields all over India, used in battlefields all over India. And this was practiced in quite a lot, I would say, till British came. When British came, they knew that this thing was vastly superior to what they were trying to do or what they were practicing. Mm-hmm. So they decided to totally ban and suppress this art, which was the case, and they did it quite successfully. Bringing the Arms Act was one of the main points how they were possible to suppress it. So, but now slowly it is reviving.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cool.
Sanatan Shastra Vidya, yeah.
No, please go ahead. Finish.
Sanatan Shastra Vidya it is a debatable. I would like my Kalari friends would say that no, Kalari is the oldest, and some they come up with some other art. But I feel Sanatan Shastra Vidya is the oldest because if you test it on certain principles, first to be the oldest Indian language was Sanskrit. Shastra Vidya uses a lot of words of Sanskrit, and in our Sanskrit texts, we have a lot of principles which are laid thereupon, which are used in Shastra Vidya till now. Second, Shastra Vidya is just like our other classical music or our Vedas. We cannot change them, we cannot dilute them. Similarly, we cannot dilute the principles of Shastra Vidya. We have been using it just as the way our ancestors used it thousands of years ago.
Mm-hmm. Right, and like you said, there's the underlying unity is very much present in, and it to me it just reminds me generally of the integral unity of the Indian civilization. You see this across so many fields where, people debate about, this is the oldest or that is the oldest. The reality is the civilization is so old that it's very hard to pinpoint that this was older and this is older and that is older.
Exactly.
That is, that's a fruitless debate. What is more important is to understand the manifestations of the same underlying principles. I mean,
Right.
the basic idea that there's one reality and many manifestations. I mean, you see that across, for our different dance forms, our different music forms, our different martial arts, even our languages. I mean, if you look at the substrate of Indian languages, there are so many. You can very clearly see that there's an underlying substrate that is very common, and then over a period of time, things have evolved differently because while India is, fundamentally there's a core of unity and civilizational oneness, because it's such a huge and vast, geographically diverse place, that obviously things would need to evolve in different regions in different ways to suit. I mean, obviously living in the Himalayas is very different from living in Kerala, and living in Rajasthan is very different
kind of martial arts. Yeah, they developed. Yeah,
works in Rajasthan desert doesn't work in the the floods and the jungles of Assam. So
right.
It is like, you have the underlying core, and then it's customized by different regions to work in their own ways. So that's great to know. I'm actually fascinated by your personal journey. I mean, you've done an MCA as your educational background. Most people who do MCAs, they go on to become software engineers and aspire to go to the US on H-1B visa and work for some soulless corporate ridiculous job for the rest of their lives and live the suburban American dream/nightmare. You chose a very different life path for yourself. So I'm curious to learn more about you, Yogaditya. Please, if you can tell us about your personal journey.
Well, I was interested in bodybuilding and the martial aspects since when I was a kid. Since then, a huge influence on me was from the side of my maternal grandfather, my Nanaji,
Mm-hmm.
who was a well-known wrestler and a strong man. So he used to teach me some basic techniques of wrestling and all this, and it all left a huge impact on me. Then to choose a career, I got into computers, then I did my MCA. Then I worked for around 1.5 or 2 years. But then I felt that maybe this kind of lifestyle is not for me. This kind of 9-to-5 job I can't do forever. So then I got myself a physical education and certificate in fitness training and nutrition. And I left the job. I came into this field and I worked as a trainer. Then I got my own gym. Somewhere down the line, while observing the martial art classes in my gym, I used to think of their practicality, whether the techniques the guy was teaching, could they be used on road? Could they be used anywhere? And then I thought that he was teaching Taekwondo. It was Taekwondo and Karate with some aspects of Krav Maga and Israeli martial art. So I used to think that, okay, these are all foreigner. Where is our art?
Right.
And at the same time, we decided to go into bodybuilding also, and for the research purpose of book, we were traveling all over India. Then one aspect came to my mind, a question came to my mind, that every idol of any deity or any hero, he is never without any arm. He is always armed. He or she is always armed, be it Bhagavati Devi, be it Vishnuji, be it Shivji, they always have arms. So that means we belong to a martial culture. So if there is a culture, there must be a martial art, which unified all this. So from there, this research started to happen. Then by God's grace, I met Gurudev. So from there, this thing picked up. This was in 2017 that I first met my Gurudev. And since then, I've been practicing it and researching over this issue, over this thing. So it has been quite a hopping journey from here to there and there.
Well, I have to admire you, both yourself and Manavshiji. I mean, you both had standard corporate jobs, and you could have chosen the path that millions of us have taken to live a life of conventional, uh, you know, middle class, upper middle class path to go on with your lives, but you chose different path, and I respect that. And it doesn't come without personal sacrifices. So, uh, what is your inspiration? What keeps you motivated?
Well, motivation comes from inside. It is not that someone else is going to motivate you, or you are going to do it by seeing someone else. It is your something which kicks inside you. It is the passion which comes out, and that is the basic reason. And for me, the motivation is knowing my culture. As like I said, I was very much interested in knowing all the questions. I had read the historical tales, and I had heard the ballads of how Maharana Pratap could cut a warrior along with his horse in just one sword blow, and that too vertically. So these kind of questions were always there. How could it happen? How could it happen? And these questions were I asked the martial artists, I asked Japanese martial artists, that how is it possible that a man could deliver a blow with such a force? Similarly, many other historical incidents. How could Prithviraj Chauhan shoot an arrow just by hearing the voice? Like all these things. So this research, these were the motivations in the early times. Then when I met Gurudev, when I practiced this, I found answers to most of these questions. And then I realized that I have to learn this art because it connects me to my roots, to my heritage, to my culture. So that is the main motivation right now.
That's
To
fascinating.
learn about it, yeah, to tell people about it is one more thing.
Right. Uh, Obviously, you're very influenced by your Gurudev, and we'll chat more about that later. What other ideas, books, historians, people, personalities, philosophers, anybody things that you find inspiring or interesting or kind of like think that people should know about? So whose ideas, whose works, whose thoughts you consider uh, you know personally important, or who have influenced yourself in your thinking and in your personal evolution?
Yeah, I have been influenced by Swami Dayanand Saraswati a lot, Swami Vivekananda a lot, and ancient Indian warriors. Names of some of whom people don't even know. If Bajirao Mastani wouldn't have come, how many of us would be knowing about Peshwa Bajirao? So such were my inspirations from really an early age. I was very much interested into history, and when this combination of martial arts and history combined, then it was a new path opening up for me to learn. So I was very much influenced by these people. Then obviously right now it's my Gurudev. He's an awe-inspiring personality.
Wow, great. Um, you know, so beyond learning from books and thinking about ideas and stuff like that, you also travel to a lot of places. You briefly mentioned that you went to a lot of temples and places, and with yourself and your wife, you're both heritage travelers. Tell us a little bit more about how did you pick these places? Where did you hear about them, and what made you go there?
First of all, it started with my traveling for the purpose of bodybuilding for the contests all over India. I would take a day or two extra, and I would visit whatever places were near to it. It wasn't decided by me like the contest. If it is going to be somewhere in Pune, I would decide that I would visit the places around it. But then slowly and slowly, as we went deeper into research, we decided to pick our places. Some which were related to our martial centers where the battles had been fought, or to forts or to famous temples. Like I have visited most, I would not say all, but most of the battlefields of India, which have been so important in Indian history. Panipat, Taravri, Khanwa, Lal Sot, Patan, these areas, Samogarh, these areas. And then the temples, Khajuraho, Kiradu, and a lot of temples in Madhya Pradesh and Rajasthan, this area. Then the forts and fortresses, in order to understand the martial culture and the strategic thinking about the Indians of bygone eras, forts and fortresses are a treasure. They are a treasure. Yeah. So these all points made it easier to choose the place.
Mm-hmm. Now, this again, pursuing your passion must come at a lot of personal cost. So, how do you deal with, for example, when you look around and a lot of people are getting sponsorships and things like that, like especially if you're in the West and somebody as talented as yourself, I mean, there will be people saying that, look, you're pursuing an unconventional sort of career path, but it's beneficial to the society, and so maybe we can help you with that. Uh, so talk to me a little bit about personal cost to yourselves in terms both in terms of lost career opportunities plus just the sheer cost of maintaining this kind of passion and pursuit, and maybe also tell us if anybody has ever stepped up to offer any help for you.
Well, the cost is not much. It is not like that we are incurring some very huge costs or very huge expenses on this kind of thing. It is just like people go out for a vacation.
Mm-hmm.
Like most Delhi people, they head out to Mussoorie, Shimla, Nainital.
Mm-hmm.
I head out westward to Rajasthan, to Madhya Pradesh.
Right.
The cost is almost similar or even less. It depends on your passion. So it is a twin thing. You get a holiday and you get knowledge.
Right.
So people have been coming with the offers of support and of sponsorships. Yeah, they have been coming.
That's good to know. And from our we are very happy to also even from the Agastya Gurukulam family, we would like to offer anything we can work with yourself and Manavshiji. It'll be our pleasure, and we'll look for opportunities to collaborate with you because we truly believe that what you're doing is it is extremely important work. It needs to be supported and spread as far and wide as possible, and we are happy to do our part. Just so like I mentioned earlier, we did a camp for American kids in Pondicherry last year, and in that course, in a residential camp, we taught the Saffron Sports book. Kids had a great time learning about stories of these great warriors. They enacted skits. They made a play out of it, and it was great to see them, connecting with their roots in a different fashion, in sort of what they would not have seen in an American textbook about history of India. So, we thank you for both yourself and your wife for doing the work that you do. Now, switching gears a little bit, very quickly, how did you find your Guruji? I mean, I understand he's one of the last few, maybe the last person surviving who knows the Sanatan Shastra Vidya, and he's trying to keep it alive. How did you meet him and pursue your passion with his guidance?
Ours is the last surviving akhada of Sanatan Shastra Vidya. This was basically established in 1661. And Gurudev is ninth in the lineage of Gurudevs till now. So it was, you can say, by luck I met him. I was just trying to meet him. I was, like I told you, there were martial art classes in my gym going on. I did not have any experience of any kind of martial art. So I decided that, okay, I'll learn some moves myself. So I enrolled in a self-defense class. And as usual, as it happens, there were many people on first day, a bit less on second day, then again, dwindling numbers. And after around 10 days, I found that I was, and the teacher were only there. So my teacher at that time, he was already in touch of Gurudev. So he told me that I'll make you meet with a personality who is very much into Indian martial arts, and given your interest for history, you might find it useful and interesting. So I said, okay. So that was the way. Gurudev was scheduled to arrive in Delhi, and that was the time that I met him. It was in 2017. I was Mr. India in 2016. I was quite bulky at that time. And the first word Gurudev said to me was, how do you scratch your back?
I think a lot of us should be asking that question to ourselves.
Yeah. So from there, I developed a liking and was totally influenced by him. And
I want to spend some time on the topic of weapons and metallurgy in ancient India, because I find that subject fascinating. There's such a tremendous history in there. So maybe we start with that. What kind of weapons were used in India? If we can just start with an overview from you on history.
Well, Indians have, I think, more number of weapons than any country. Or even if you combine all the civilizations, Indian had more weapons.
Mm-hmm.
It is exactly a quote I'm borrowing from my Gurudev. He says, we Indians are nerds. And so our fighting art should also be like nerdish. It should be very intelligent. Yeah, that is absolutely true.
Right. Well, if only we could take all these software engineers and turn them into martial artists, I think that would be a great change.
Yeah. That's maybe that's the reason I liked it so much.
Right.
Like talking about weapons, there are more weapons than you can even count.
Mm-hmm.
Weapons suited for different kind of battle, for different kind of terrain, for different kind of opposition. Even for what the adversary is wearing, you have different weapons according to that. On what position are you going to fight? For one thing I would like to say here, for martial art, Sanatan Shastra Vidya is different from other arts as it is a killing art. It is a battlefield art. It does not depend on the reaction. Like every other martial art that you see, they are basically self-defense. Like someone punches you, you parry it or you block it. We don't have any such concept. The first concept of what we teach and what we learn in Shastra Vidya is Shastra Vidya borrows a lot of their sayings and language from Punjabi, as the last akhada is based in Punjab. Last akhada was based in Punjab.
Mm-hmm.
So the saying goes, my Punjabi friends would appreciate and understand it. It goes, halya nahi, salya nahi.
Mm-hmm.
That means as soon as the adversary moves, he is dead.
Right.
So we attack the attack. So the weapons used all over India, all over most part of the northern India, as they used to follow the Kshatriyas all over in northern India, they used to follow Sanatan Shastra Vidya, which was an elite art,
right,
which was elite used by Kshatriyas and the upper level warriors.
Mm-hmm.
So they have many fold of weapons. Like we talk about swords. In India, we have around 150 different kind of swords.
Wow.
And they have such, you can say, interesting names. Like we have spears. We have many kind of spears. We have Sati, we have Bhala, we have Ballam. Then we have a new, which I have found recently. It's a very different kind of spear. It is kept in the quiver of arrows. It's kept there. It is known as Karappa.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, similarly, there are many different kind of swords. There is Sirohi, there is Saf, there is Golia, there is Katti, there is Adkatti, there is Sool, there is Nagni. There are many different kind of swords.
Okay. So lots of hand weapons. I found it fascinating. For example, we all know the story of Shivaji killing Afzal Khan with his Wagnak. Yeah. And, that's a whole different kind of weapon.
Yeah.
So different kinds of swords, different kinds of spears, different kinds of, even I saw, for example, there's a talk on composite bows. So different kinds of bows, not just one kind of bows. Can you please talk about bows and arrows a little bit? Because archery is the main thing.
There are different kinds of bows and arrows. Like the composite bow that was used in medieval and later medieval period. It is in North India. It was known as a Multani bow.
Okay.
Because the best bow makers were based in Multan area.
Mm-hmm.
So it was known as Multani bow. It is still known as a Multani bow. It's a composite bow, and there are different kinds of bows.
Who don't know the difference, can you please explain what is a composite bow versus a normal, like a non-composite?
A normal bow is made of a single piece of wood or material, whereas a composite uses different materials to enhance the power and the elasticity of the bow. Like the one we actually see in drawings of Sri Ram and Arjun, the one which is curved like this, that is basically a composite bow. And right, this is just a C or D, that is a simple bow most of the times. It could be made of a bamboo, it could be made of any other flexible wood or some other material. Steel bows are even heard about.
Mm-hmm.
Like similarly, there were different kind of arrows, pointed arrows, blunt edge arrows, crescent-shaped arrows, Ardhachandrakar, and arrows with the head of a Trishul, trident, fire arrows. There were different kind of arrows which were used on different occasions and to defeat different kind of adversaries.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cool. So linked to that is the knowledge of metallurgy. I mean, if we were able to build these kind of advanced and very like a wide range of weaponry suitable for many different purposes, there must have been a great tradition and a tradition knowledge in metallurgy used to build and create these weapons. So can you speak a little bit more to that, please?
Yeah, metallurgy was very much advanced in India. And Indians made the famous steel, right now known as Woods steel, somewhere in BC. And later on, it came to be known as Damascus steel. People call it wrongly. It's not actually based or derived from somewhere in Syria or a region Damascus. It was basically Indian steel. And Indian metallurgists and workmen, they found a way to induce carbon into iron to make different kinds of swords and arrowheads and spears a lot before the rest of the world came to know about it. Now, coming to this thing, there is one thing I would like to add. As we all are inspired too much and kids are too much inspired by Bollywood, we see swords clashing. We see a lot of swords, which is absolutely a sin in Shastra Vidya. You never clash swords. Swords are never clashed. They are not meant to be clashed. Sword, as we say, it is a roop of Devi. Devi roop hota hai. So it is to be respected. And with boots steel, when swords were made, they could be very, very sharp, much sharper than today's blades. It was very flexible, but they broke on contact. On repeated contacts, they broke.
I see.
So one of the reasons that they are never ever clashed is that because wood steel was expensive at that time, and breaking an expensive sword and that too in the middle of battle, that was sure disaster.
Right.
So we had different alloys, and the warrior used to carry different swords made of different alloys. Maybe he had a Polad sword, which could be clashed, but it was not that sharp. Now to take a head off, he would use a wood steel sword. Now, the research has shown that we had been manufacturing these swords, and even foreign writers have written about it. I was recently going through a book by a Pakistani writer, Latifullah. Pakistani origin writer, I must say, because that region now is in Pakistan. It was a medieval-aged book, and he talks about Indian steel ingots being exported to far-off lands. He says that the Crusader warriors, they first time encountered the curved swords which in Damascus area, and that's why this is steel which could cut through their armor. This is steel they came to call it as Damascus steel.
Right, but it was manufactured in India and exported there.
Yeah, it was manufactured in India. It was exported all over India. There are researches which show that even the Egyptians might be using it long time back.
Right.
It was exported to Greece. Yeah.
Well, it's sad that today Prime Minister Modi has to talk about Make in India. It's almost such a decline that going from a place where where we had such great metallurgy and technology and even exporting military hardware to other countries, the depletion of capacity to create, manufacture, and engineer things has just been terrible.
I would like to give a small example over here. I would like to give a small example of metallurgy. You might have heard of a company which makes blades based in US and Canada, Cold Steel.
Okay, I don't know about them, but I'll look them up there.
Yeah, Cold Steel is a famous company of blades. They make swords, they make knives and all this, and they carry out research on this also. They were unable to decipher the composition of Indian wood steel. The water, they were unable to know how could Indians water it, how could they make them dough sharp, how could the balance in that sword be so important. So how could Indians do this? They were dumbfounded. They had even contacted my Gurudev to know about this, but Unfortunately, this kind of art is more or less gone.
Right. That's very sad to know. So how did Indian weapon design influence, weapon designs in other countries? For example, if we're exporting this much to the Middle East, did they learn from our designs and turn that into, again, customize that later on for their own uses?
Like most of the arts and sciences the Western world now has, like algebra, they call it algebra. The basis is in India. It just went to them through Arabia and that region.
Right.
So similarly, weapon designs were also going from this place to there, like the curved sword. I had heard historians say that Indians did not have the curved sword; they had a straight sword. But I myself have seen of swords and sculptures which date back to first or second AD. Curved sword of different types, forward curving, backward curving, they are all there. So Indians had these curved sword, and this design, it very much impressed the Westerners when they encountered their adversaries of Indian or the Arabian origin. Because curved sword has some very advantageous, it is very advantageous over a straight sword.
Okay.
Sometimes. Yeah. So, and similarly other weapons also. So, like, you learn in a fight. Whether you win or you lose, you always learn in a fight. It was case all over the world. It was the case with Indians also. We also did this thing. Like, I would like to say, Sanatan Shastra Vidya. Sanatan Shastra Vidya, the principles are the same, but we can now use a firearm also.
Right.
Firearm can also be used by the same principles as we use in another projectile weapon, like in the past. So similarly, the Westerners also learned a lot from here. We learned from them. It was an ongoing exchange program, although nobody wished it to be, but it was always an exchange program due to the battles and wars being fought.
Right.
So curved swords went. Curved sword was there, yeah, and similarly armors, different kind of armors and chainmail. They also made way to the west from here. They took many weapons from here and the idea of weapons from here.
So when the Middle Eastern armies started attacking India in, say, around the first attacks starting in the year 700, how were the weapons different from ours? What kind of weapons were they using versus what kind of weapons were we using? And then did they started coming together? Like, for example, people say Shamsher is a sword that came from Persia to India, something like that.
Pardon? I could not hear you. Last thing.
Shamsher is a sword, is a Persian sword.
Oh yeah, Shamsher, yeah.
So
Shamsher is a Persian sword. The Indian version of it is called Golia. So it has been always their curved sword. The weapons of Arabian invaders and Indians, they were more or less the same, but the efficiency and the strength were much different. Indians were much advanced at that time. One thing which we Indians, you could say that we could be lacking, you can say, or was a difference, it was due to our Kshatriya Dharma. We depended too much on Dharma. We did not do night attacks. We did not take captives. We did not cut the heads of people caught in battle, of prisoners of war. These things played a lot. And what I feel, Westerners, they were afraid of getting into one-on-one battle with Indian Westerners or Arabians even. They were afraid of getting into a melee kind of battle with Indian armies. So they relied more on sneak attacks, on projectile attacks.
Okay.
Yeah. But things were very much in favor of Indians and Indian armies till about 1100 AD.
Yes, well, I mean, if you do not annihilate your enemy after defeating them in battle times, then
this is what Yuddha Niti says. This Niti, if they had followed this Niti, they forgot the Niti of their own ancestors. Sri Ram killed Bali from behind a tree. Yeah. Crushed annihilated his many of his enemies by using tricks. So that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and in Mahabharata, Sri Krishna is a complete, personality, not because he's absolutely always morally superior and doing always everything that is right, he understands that sometimes in defense of dharma, you have to do things that are needed, right?
Exactly.
So anyway, not to stray from the topic though, can you describe a few weapons?
Yeah, one of the weapons which is found in India, it was developed in later medieval period. It's a katar. It's basically a punch dagger which is grabbed like this, and the blade comes out from here. So it is a very versatile kind of weapon used to pierce through armors. Then in ancient periods, we had different kind of arrows, and we had a special kind of sword which was curved outwards. Now it is known as atti. So this sword was curved outwards. Most of the swords that we see, they are curved inwards, but this kind of sword was curved outwards. Then we had different kind of maces, most of which kind of maces are not seen in rest of the world. So there are many weapons, and in medieval period, there's even a weapon known as kadam koda, which is basically two chains attached to a handle, and there are two small balls on hanging from it.
So then a related question, I know you speak about going to temples and visiting them for inspiration on this. What role did temples play in in our martial arts and military studies? Can you please talk about that?
Temples were earlier not only a place to worship, they were a hub around which various activities revolved around them. They were a place of learning. Gurukuls often were associated with temples and mosques. And Shastra Vidya, it was a subject which was deeply researched and studied in those times. So there must be, like even now, we have akhadas. We have Nirvani Akhada. Why it is known as Akhada?
Mm-hmm.
Akhada is a place where for doing wrestling. Why they are known as Akhada?
Right.
Because we never left the path of Shastra with Shastra. Both things were to get together. So temples, they were a place for learning Shastra Vidya also. People went there, they learned Shastra Vidya. Even the sadhus and the pujaris, they were proficient in Shastra Vidya. We have had sages who were always proficient in Shastra Vidya. We have Vishwamitra, we have Vashisht since time immemorial. So these people, and temples, they played a pivotal role in Indian civilization. They were the house, they were the home of culture, they were of various arts and fighting arts, sciences.
Right. You know what? I think you're touching upon something that is so fascinating and important for people to learn. And even for me personally, it's been a growing realization over time how important temples were. Because when we founded Agastya Gurukulam, we looked into the history of education in India. And it turns out temples were centers of education. That's where every village had a temple, and the temple ran schools, right? That's where people got educated. And you speak about Shastra and Shastra being connected, which is a great concept and a great insight. You look at Yogaditya Singh who comes from the Gorakhnath Akhada, right?
I would like to add here, if I can interrupt you, I would like to add here, the Nath and the Naga sadhus, they were very much proficient in Shastra Vidya.
Right.
And they even might be. I can say. They just don't open about to normal public. And we have many battles where Naga sadhus have fought as vanguard of many armies. Like the Jaipur state in later medieval period, the vanguard was always Naga sadhus and the Gosais. The Battle of Lal Sot and Battle of Patan between Marathas and Naga sadhus were the vanguard of the Jaipur army.
Mm-hmm. Well, so, even in Bengal, for the matter, you had the Sassi rebellion in even as late as in the late 1800s, where and this is in fact fascinating history, but I don't know if many people understand this or know this, is that that is what Bankim Chandra Chatterjee wrote in his book.
Exactly.
The song Vande Mataram comes from a book with Anand Math, which is essentially set against this backdrop of the sannyasi rebellion in Bengal, in which our sadhus and the sannyasis took up arms and fought against the British in battle. So they the integral unity of across different disciplines is very much there. That you practice dharma in peace times in a different way, and you practice dharma in war times in a different way, and you have to be ready for both of that. And it is the temple that learns the where you go and learn. Very
It has
fascinating.
been very rightly said. It has been very rightly said in our texts, ancient texts, that Shastra and Shastra are two wheels of a chariot over which Dharma rides.
Right. That's a great analogy. That's a great picture for us to
Yeah.
think of. Okay. Another related question is, what is the difference between Astra and Shastra?
Astra Shastra, we call them a combined term. Many people don't understand the difference. The basic difference is Astra is basically a projectile. It's a weapon which is meant to be thrown or to be used from a distance, like bow and arrow, like spear, which comes, it could be a shastra also, it could be astra also, a slingshot, a boomerang. These kind of weapons, they are astra, which can be thrown, which are used as a projectile. Whereas a shastra is a weapon which is held in hand and the combat then happens, like a sword, like a mace, like a katar, like a dagger. These kinds, they are shastra. Now, in Shastra Vidya, we have a different kind of definition to this. Because this all is so much, you use the Hindi word, it is so much ghalmel. Like, you can use the spear in throwing, you can use the spear by keeping it in hand. Similarly, you can throw the mace. You can throw the mace, the gada, then you can fight it by keeping it in hand. So some of the weapons, they come in both the categories. Then in Shastra Vidya, in Sanatan Shastra Vidya, we have a different kind of definition for Shastra. For us, a Shastra is, for us, every Shastra is pious. It is a manifestation of the supreme power. And Shastra is a weapon which actually draws blood and offers the blood to Devi.
Okay.
Which can draw blood. Like it's basically a bladed weapon. Yeah, and the weapons which don't draw blood, like clubs, sticks, they are called Mansui weapons. Mansui. They are Mansui Shastra in our Shastra Vidya.
Just wondering if you can show some weapons from, or some pictures of weapons that you might have. How do we share that?
I can show you right now. I'm having a thing here, which is, you can see this.
Right. Yeah, very cool.
Yeah, this is, you can think it to be an ornament, an ornamental kada. Yeah, this is a basic self-defense weapon.
Oh, okay.
It was, yeah. And historically and in temple iconography, you can find it in the hands of Varaha.
Okay.
Yeah, this can be used as a punching accessory. This is used like this, giving the serrated edge here, this.
Right.
And the punches are then, you can use it to punch the enemy. You can use it by throwing, you can use it hitting like this. So this is there. Then one another thing, Indians differed from other countries a lot in their construction and use of shields. The basis of Indian martial art, actually, I would like to tell you that in Sanatan Shastra Vidya, we don't have any kind of aspect of blocking the blow. We don't block. We never block.
Okay.
We use a concept known as, very interesting name, Rudra Chaya. Now, Rudra Chaya is something, it is based on the principle that if I am not present at the target point, I won't be hit. So I always leave the place where the blow is intended to land. So I don't need to block the incoming blow. So Indians had a smaller shield. This is the Indian shield used in olden times. And you can see it is just about the size of a head. This is known as a croat. Yeah, there are different kinds of shield in India. There is sipar, there is dhal, and this is a croat. So the science behind our fighting arts was such that this is used to just cover the head and the front. And it works like eclipse. Like you can say, moon comes in between the sun and earth. Moon is much smaller than the sun, but still we are not able to see the sun. the same principle this shield used to work. I keep it here and I keep my body behind this. Like this punch. This punch is covering my face.
Right.
Yeah. So this was the concept we used, and it was very different. And you might have seen many pictures of Devi Kali holding a severed head in her hand.
Right.
Yeah. She carries a mund. Now, why is that mund in her head, in her hand? It is not a decorative item. It was basically a very ferocious kind of psychological warfare. And that head was used by Indians sometimes as a shield. They would pick a head from the battlefield, grab it like this, and use it.
Wow. Yeah, no, and you see something similar. For example, the Vikings, when they attacked Europeans, they would have these severed heads of their enemies on their ships just to psychologically strike fear into the enemy. So that's how.
So we Indians were not behind the Vikings. We Indians were not behind them.
Yeah, no, that's great to learn. Now, one more thing I wanted to ask you about is you visit a lot of temples and you see a lot of murtis with lots of different kinds of weapons. So speak about the different weapons on different murtis, and we'll share pictures on our social media later.
Like I said, the murti of Varaha is quite common throughout the temples, old temples, ancient temples. In one hand, Varaha is seen holding this kind of chakra or kada, and in other hand, he holds a club. A club is a very ancient weapon. It is one of the most ancient weapons used by humankind all over the world. It could be made of metal, it could be made of wood. Even Bhagwan Shiv is known to have a club named as Khatanga.
Mm-hmm.
Shatanga, yeah. So the Varaha holds that club. Many of our other deities I have also seen holding that club in temple iconography. And then bows and arrows are always there. Swords are there. Kalima uses a different kind of sword. Khadag, which is known, Adkatti kind, it is known as Adkatti. It is outwards, it curves to outwards. Then Murugan, he uses a Shaktipan, which is basically a very broad spear.
Right.
Yeah, so there are different kind of weapons. Parshuramji, he uses an axe.
Mm-hmm.
But now I have found the ancient sculptures and the artists, they knew that how a weapon was used and they depicted in the correct form. Nowadays, we don't know it.
Right.
The artists today, they don't know it. I have seen Lord Krishna holding chakra here, and it is revolving as it is. It has some kind of a machinery fitted into it, or it is battery operated and is moving like this. This was not the case.
Right.
Chakra was just like this. If you see old pictures and old sculptures, they would depict it like this.
Right.
From here, it rotated like this, which is quite easy.
Yeah.
And you throw it like this.
Right.
Similarly, the axe. Parshuram, nowadays, he's seen holding an axe from the bottom part. While the battle axe, if it was small, it was always held from the upper part.
Right. Yeah, no, it's fascinating to see. You're right. The evolution of sculpture in temples as it depicts. I love South Indian temples, and I think I've seen pictures of, because Murugan is also the god of war. Right?
Yeah, he's the god of war.
And Murugan is loved and worshipped just as Kartikeya in India, in the rest of the countries, but brother of Ganesh. And I think in the south he's the younger brother and Ganesh is the older, or it's the other way around. I get confused which way it is. But it is interesting that our ancestors gave us the right framework to understand a society that you will have gods that will be gods of war. That, whether it's Murugan or Rama or Parshuram or many of the other people that we lean on in our history who fought to protect Dharma. So you're right, that to me is another depiction of how Shastra and Shastra are integrated.
Yeah. One more thing I would like to add here. going according to the feminism debate all around the world right now. And we Indians were very much advanced and forward-looking and forward-thinking. We had a goddess of war always.
Right.
The primordial deity of war is Kali. Everywhere, every Kshatriya family, they have a Ishta Devi, and it is always a manifestation of Kali or Durga.
Yeah.
And every battle begins by first worshipping Kali.
Well, and Shivaji was a worshipper of Bhavani. I mean, even the Marathas' war cry was Jai Bhavani.
Every Kshatriya warrior you can find from past, they always worship Kali or some manifestation of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Even now in Shastra Vidya, before going to combat, we just offer our heads to Kali.
That's right. And the one good part is some of these traditions continue in the Indian Army. I know that, for example, the Gorkha regiment, their war cry is Jai Mahakali, Ayo Ayo Gorkhali, right? So in the name of Goddess Mahakali, here comes the Gorkha to save, to fight against the enemy. So that Gorkha regiment today still has the same war cry that they've had for hundreds and thousands of years. How can we revive this for our current generation, where we can teach them martial arts that are based in Kalari, Sanatan Shastra Vidya, Gatka, whether it's sword dancing, sword fighting, or other kinds of martial arts. Even Malkham, for example, in Maharashtra, that is based in the martial arts of the Marathas. How do we make that accessible and teach that to our kids?
First of all, we would have to make them knowledgeable about our roots. Then we need to tell them about the challenges they are going to face. And we need to tell them that the solutions lie in our own systems. It is not that we have to rush to some outside system to learn it or like this. We have it all in our tradition. Like one thing I was thinking and I was pondering over the issue, but I don't know what time we Indians decided to go without arming ourselves.
Right.
Every Indian household, every Indian elder, even in villages, is still, at least he has a staff. He has a lut with him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No. In my own family, we're not Kshatriyas, but in my own family, we've had weapons.
Yeah. Every household had it. So it was never an issue that we are forcing our children. It was always in our blood. I don't know what kind of education, what kind of system then came, which made us forget all this. So first thing is we need to know about our roots, which you are doing a wonderful job. Agastya Gurukulam is doing an excellent and wonderful job.
Thank you.
Yeah, and that is the way forward. We let the children know about our roots. Then we introduce them to the concepts which we are having from since time immemorial. And we let them know of the challenges that are in front of them and how we can overcome them using our traditional knowledge. So that is the way forward.
So actually, maybe you can elaborate that a little bit more because you might know about this. So in pre-colonial India, before the time of the British, I'm pretty sure that, when Indians were only fighting, the Mughals and the Islamic invaders, they must have been teaching this everywhere, right? Otherwise, Shivaji would not be able to raise an army, fight against the mighty Aurangzeb, if people weren't already, at least in some shape or form, were trained. But then once the British came, that tradition cut off. So how were we teaching martial arts to kids in pre-colonial times before the British came, and then what did they do to stop that? And the Macaulite education system, which essentially was created to produce clerks and coolies, that took root. So can you describe what do you know about martial arts education in pre-colonial versus colonial education systems?
Yeah, at that time, actually, the armies were made up of the elite warriors, and then there was the normal soldiers who came from the peasantry class. So they could not be just like this, that they are picked up and thrown into battle. They need to be given a basic kind of training, which was given by the elite warriors themselves as some kind of, you can say, a kam chalao, or some which will work for them in situations. So that kind of training was provided to them. And the hub, like we already discussed, hub was most often the village itself or the temple. The temple had akhadas attached to it. The kings would promote these arts. They would keep gurus, and they would support them. They would support akhadas. They would allocate land to akhadas and temples, which was used for the sustenance of these arts and the teachers. So it was all a very well-oiled system, which was working quite well and very well till British came over. Then British understood that this is the basic point which we need to take out in order to turn Indians into our eternal slaves. Because till the warrior spirit is there, you cannot subdue the race. So for a warrior, you need arms. So the first thing they did was to bring the Arms Act. They brought the Arms Act. Like there are several classes which we even now we call the martial classes, the martial communities in India. Some of these martial communities were termed as criminals. It was they were totally outlawed. So British used a variety of ways and a variety of techniques to suppress this thing. I was recently going through a book where Aurangzeb has also decreed when he was in his late region, he has decreed that nobody else, those in service of Aurangzeb, are allowed to carry arms. The same way the Britishers also did. They suppressed anyone carrying arms. Carrying of arms was declared illegal. Your arms were confiscated. If you were found practicing this, you were tortured, you were put into jails, you were banished. So all these things were done. Gurus were hunted down. Even in our akhada, our fifth guru, Guru Baba, Gurudev Baba, Sawan Singh Bangru, he was hunted for almost 30 years. He is the one who is credited to keep this flame alive. Yeah. He took his disciples and pupils into deep jungles. He taught them there, keeping themselves disguised. For 30 full years, he was hunted till he managed to train 3-4 people who took this art forward.
Fascinating. Yeah, no, I think there's parallel stories all over India. Like you mentioned, there are
parallel
for
stories
example,
all over India.
The word thug in English comes from Thuggis, and British declared as a criminal race because they were fierce warriors and fighters. They were the ones who were fighting against the British, and they were fierce warriors. And so, the British used legislation and laws as a very effective ways of branding people as bad, and then creating sort of social exclusion for them, and then removing that source of resistance against them from who were very strong and proud warriors.
Even the terms Gunda and Mawali, if we go into history of these, Gunda, they were basically knuckle fighters.
Oh, is that right?
Who practiced knuckle fighting. So they were a danger to British because of a warrior spirit in a man, and he engages in a sport or an activity which promotes that. It is always going to be a trouble for the ruling party.
Especially a foreign colonial ruling part.
Yeah. Similarly, the case with Mawali. Mawals, they were known to be ardent followers of Shivaji Raja.
Oh, is that right? I didn't know that. So what part of India were they from?
From Maharashtra.
Oh, okay. So Mawals from Maharashtra were fighting.
That's right. Now, and now you get the word Mawali, which means a bad word. So it was all
and they show that in Hindi movies, then just call them Gunda and Mawali, right? There's a movie named Gunda.
Yeah. Same case with, as you mentioned, with thugs.
Right. And then same story in the South. I mean, the art of cutlery was also practically extinct, right? I think the colonial rulers tried very much to completely destroy the cutlery grams and the ashrams where cutlery was taught in practice. In Tamil Nadu and Kerala, they tried to annihilate and eradicate that completely. But luckily, I think in the South, there is more of a revival going on. And like I mentioned, when we did the camp last year, in Pondicherry, we had a traditional culinary guru. There's an institute in Pondicherry that we reached out to, and we had the kids, learn at least a little bit of
That's
culinary
great. That's great.
in the time there. So, and they loved it. Like, it's the same kids in the US and Canada. They come back here and they practice taekwondo and karate and stuff like that. So it's great for them to learn a little bit of that. Then speaking of that, I understand that your Guruji is trying to revive Sanatan Shastra Vidya, and he does hold seminars and camps in different parts of the world. Could you please talk a little bit more about that? And we do want to spread the message and awareness about this very, very important topic, because it's that our kids get access to gurus and traditions like the ones that you're practicing. So can you please talk about how those trainings and camps can be made accessible to people anywhere? And where are they held, and how can people register for them?
Gurudev travels all over the world to conduct seminars and camps. Shastra Vidya it is divided into two parts. The first is the Jangi Vidya, which is the battlefield science, the battlefield art. And the second one is Swaraksha, the self-defense part, which is more suitable for general public, for our young men, for our ladies, especially. And you might be pleased to know that Shastra Vidya has a different, totally different aspect and principles for people who are differently abled. It's not that they are not able, they will not be able to learn Shastra Vidya. They too are incorporated into this. And so Gurudev is trying to revive this by conducting seminars and camps. We are very close to launching an app, an Android and Apple Store based app, which is soon going to come out, which is going to teach you basics of Shastra Vidya. And senior students will also be coming aboard to teach the self-defense part. As far as the Jangi Vidya or the battlefield science or art is concerned, only Gurudev will be teaching that. For the self-defense part, we all would be there, and the app would be there, which is going to do a lot of good and a lot of help. And similarly, we are in the process of publishing 3 books also, which would be translated in a multitude of languages, in multi-language. English, Hindi, Tamil, Telugu, Kannada, all these are going to come up. Punjabi. So it would cover the basics of Shastra Vidya, principles, history, and how we can use it to develop ourselves, all this.
Great. And what parts of the world are these seminars held? Are they in India, UK, Canada? Where are they? And when can we see? I know you have a website, so you publish a schedule there.
Yeah, the schedule is there on the website. It is updated regularly, and we already are having regular seminars in US, Canada, UK, Italy, Germany, India. In India, and it started in 2017, and we try to have at least 2 or 3 seminars per year.
Okay. And are these in Delhi only, or are they in other cities in India as well?
We organize seminars in Delhi, in Bombay, in Baroda. We have had them in Bangalore, in Hyderabad. So basically trying to cover all over India.
Great. So how do we institutionalize this? I mean, there are thousands of dojos teaching martial arts to kids here in the US and Canada. There's nothing like that for Kalari or Sanatan Shastra Vidya or things like that, where there's a more organized way of reaching a much larger audience. And not necessarily just Indians. Anybody should be able to learn this. Like, just people here learn Japanese sword fighting. Anybody can learn that, right? So, what's your thoughts and vision on building a more organized and institutional kind of a setup to reach?
Primarily, right now the vehicle is going to be the app. Okay. The app would teach the basics, and seminars are happening in most of the countries and the places in India and Europe and Americas and Canada. They are already happening there. So once you get a basic understanding through the app, then you can come to the seminar. You can come right away also, but if the app comes, then you are going to have a basic understanding, which helps you make full use of the time, because these seminars are usually conducted over the weekends. Like as in India, we conduct a 2-day seminar, Saturday and Sunday, whole day, both day. So in 2 days, it's obviously quite a bit if you say to learn and cram. So it always helps if you are at a basic level. So the app is designed for that. Would help you in learning the basic Swaraksha self-defense techniques, and from there you can pick it up. And Gurudev is always looking for new places where he can conduct the seminars, and we are also in the process. We were in talks to start in some schools in Delhi and Gurgaon area. We were in talks about that, but then this COVID-19 happened, so we'll have to wait for that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and that's great, right? I think probably going with an app or online kind of instruction is more suitable now. But in terms of a long-term vision, I do believe that gurus like yours and practitioners like yourself, can form a core of a revival of this martial art and make it much more accessible, and make it synonymous with martial arts, just as the Chinese martial arts are there today. There's no reason why Kalari and Sanatan Shastra Vidya and Malkham and Gatka and all these amazing martial arts that we have, why they cannot be taught to a worldwide audience. Great.
They'll surely come up. They'll surely come up. There is no doubt there, because like it is said, you can suppress a true thing, but you cannot extinguish it. So they are definitely going to come.
Right. Satyameva Jayate.
Right.
But for Satyameva Jayate to happen, Dharma Rakshati Rakshita has to happen first.
Yeah.
Great. Well, I mean, maybe I'll just post this last question and then we'll wrap there. What can Agastya do? What can people here in the US and Canada do? What can we do to help? And maybe you can talk about individual actions and collective actions.
Well, first thing, platforms like you, they can help advertising the apps, the books that we are going to come up, and maybe we can start at some point of time something like as we are deciding to do here in Delhi and Gurgaon area in some schools. We are going to teach some basic Swaraksha, the basic self-defense techniques. And from there, the kids who are more interested, they can go for the higher Vidya. So you can do this thing, and you can obviously promote the app that is going to come out. The more we talk about it, the more it is going to circulate among people, because it is such a fascinating subject. Like I know that we have quite less time now remaining, but I would like to put something in front of you which could lead you to scratching your head.
Please, yeah. Go ahead, tell us.
The basic, Shastra Vidya, actually, it works on a different kind of body mechanics, which we can't even think of. And our ancestors were so capable of using that body mechanics. Like, what if I say that we Shastra Vidya warriors, we move without using our feet?
Wow.
We lift things, or we hit, or we strike without using our hands. We make turns without using our hips.
Wow.
Now, how is it possible? You can ask.
Right.
For that, I would say that please get into Shastra Vidya.
No, fascinating. And we would love to share some of the videos of some of the performances and some of the demonstrations. I think I've seen some short clips on your website and on your Twitter. Yeah.
Yeah, as Gurudev says, and I myself feel that Shastra Vidya is not suitable for the demonstration kind of things that we see in Bollywood and Hollywood today. Because it's based on quick kill. Because in a battlefield, you don't get into a fighting kashmakash kind of thing with an opponent.
Right.
Because right now I'm fighting with person A, and I'm so engrossed in fighting with person A that person B comes and cuts my head. That's of no use in a battlefield. So Shastra Vidya demonstration kind of thing, it is only understandable when we get a basic understanding of it. then only you are going to understand that what is happening. Otherwise, a simple person, simple layman, when I first saw Gurudev, I just thought that he's not doing anything, he's just moving around, I thought.
Mhm. Right. Fascinating. Okay, I know I said last question, but I'll ask one more question, and then
Yeah.
we'll wrap. So, what is next for you? What are you already mentioned you are in the middle of writing 3 books that you'll publish.
I am
You're
not
helping.
writing that book. Gurudev is writing those
Sorry,
books.
yeah,
Yeah,
the Sanatan
I
Shastra
am in
Vidya.
the, yeah, I am doing a book on fort and fortresses and the temple iconography of our martial culture. These things. I'm
Okay,
doing it on this.
great. Well, fascinating interview. I mean, this is an incredible topic, and I'm sure we will learn a lot more from you in the future. But no, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate your time. On behalf of Agastya
Thank you.
Gurukulam, thank you very much. And
Thank you.
yeah, we will
It was so
certainly
kind of you to
keep
let me
talking
share my
about.
views about Indian martial arts. It was so kind of you, and I thank Agastya Gurukulam, and I appreciate for the great work they are doing.
You're very
That's all.
welcome. Well,
And
it's a
you,
small
and
start,
you,
but we'll together, make it bigger.
yeah, sure.
Thank you very much. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Namaste to all. Thank you.
Namaste.